before it is top of the hour clock, but we've got the papers standing in between, so we need to clear the papers and then we get to that magic hour. But to be able to do the clarification of the papers this morning on Freshly Pressed, I've got Wadi Ahime. Good morning to you.
Morning, Omas. Good
There is also Chibuzo Weziapu here. Good morning.
morning, Omas. Good morning, Wadi, and good morning, Lagos. Good
Uh,
morning, Chibuzo.
all right. So with that said, we'd like you to know we always would love to read your reactions to the newspaper headlines that we're looking at this morning. And let's have them as WhatsApp messages onto 0809 4440981. That will be where we'll read it from. So let's begin with Wade. Help us. No, let's go to Chibuzo. Chibuzo, we'd like to go straight up to the budget this morning, and that's coming from the stand of the Punch newspaper, where it states here President Tinubu to present 2024 budget on Wednesday. That's what the National Assembly can authoritatively say, barring any last minute changes. Let's get onto it, Chibuzo.
So, the President Bola Tinubu would be delivering or presenting the budget or the proposed budget for 2024 at the joint session of the National Assembly on Wednesday. Information was provided by Ali Bardi Umoru, who is the Secretary for Research and Information at the National Assembly. Now, 3 weeks ago, he had forwarded to the chambers of the National Assembly the MTF, that's the Medium Term Expenditure Framework and Fiscal Strategy paper, where they had proposed the sum of about 26.1 trillion naira as the total expenditure for 2024. So the Senate has approved the MTF, and in looking at the budget, obviously the budget is a document that shows what we plan to spend and just proposes or puts it to make. To be able to fund our budget next year, this 26.1 trillion, we're going to borrow 7.8 trillion. If my math serves me right, that's about over 40% of the amount we're going to borrow it. Then we've looked at our other main supplier of forex, funds, which is oil, and we've pegged it at the oil benchmark at 73.96. Assuming that we're going to produce at 1.78 million barrels per day. So those are the assumptions, and that is what we are going to, like I said, and we've gone through the details of the budget when it first came out, at least on the surface. We've gone through the surface of the budget when it first came out. Our concerns were about how much we're borrowing to fund the budget, and the larger concern is what we are spending on from the budget. And a lot of questions have been raised with respect to what the various amounts have been allocated for several items that have been put in that budget. I don't think the government hasn't come out to give clear answers or try to clarify why and what. Unfortunately for Nigerians, we've entrusted that job largely to the National Assembly. We are hoping that they would not just rubber stamp the budget or try to put in their own, because what we tend to see in Nigeria, like most other countries, is that when the budget goes through, instead of it to come out slim fitted to fit the needs, it comes out expanded because the members of our the hallowed chamber decide that they've not, their own personal interests have not been well covered, so they put in slightly their own amount into it, or they engage in some trade by barter process with the presidency. The truth is that Nigeria is where we are today. We have companies that have shut down or are shutting down. We have other companies that are not looking forward to 2024 with plenty excitement, but with trepidation and hope that this government's policies will at least help them to continue in business longer than 2024. And the concerns there are myriad of concerns. We are not able to fund a lot of things in Nigeria. Companies and organizations who are dependent, for instance, on forex cannot see the supply coming in through from anywhere. We need to create an environment that attracts both internal investors and external investors. We need to create an environment that keeps our best hands in the country in various sectors, or else we'll be spending the money we don't have to get replacements, or actually to bury our dead. So there are a lot of things that we need to sort out.
Chibuzo, thanks for the submission and for expanding on the need. You raised the question of, are we likely to borrow half of this 40% of this budget,
over 40%,
over 40% to fund it? And that's one concern you raised. in addition to that, there's this expression of concern of the usual traditional, at least for the past 4 years, where you've had the budget cycle starts January.
Mhm.
If the budget is presented before the Hallowed Chamber by the joint session by Wednesday, is it possible to do a thorough job with it before the end of the year to get it out there for the circle this that was left? At least no one can deny that that's not been the circle from the last administration.
We have give or take about 4 weeks, for just 4 weeks and some days to the end of the year. Both the public and private sector, a lot of people are going to be on vacation from the third week of the year, or the second week of the year, depends on if you're working in a place that gives you enough money. So if you're talking about serious business, we basically have over 2 weeks and some days to do any serious business unless you are really, really, really motivated to work. And the houses have not shown that they are that motivated to do the work. So in reality, I don't expect. I really, and I'm not trying to sound pessimistic, but I don't expect any serious work to be done on the budget before announcement. I just expect a lot of horse trading. They're going to do a cursory glance through it. They're going to do. And it's a bit sad because Nigerians are not getting value for money for our setting, because we also pay for the maintenance of offices for our house, our representatives and our honorables, and those offices are supposed to be staffed with people who know what they are doing.
Now, that in itself is knowing that what the budget would demand. Definitely ministries are supposed to come in to defend and look at the time frame again.
So,
And there were supposed to be probably public sessions where you should attend, get all these things in there.
I work in the private sector, and I've seen a lot of private sector organizations. The budget cycle for the next year probably starts at the start. For a lot of them, starts at either the start or the end of the third quarter of the year, which we're talking about September. That budget cycle starts at September, and that budget cycle involves every single department, every single unit sending in their budget request. It involves reviews of that budget, ensuring that those numbers add up. Long before this November, long before December, those numbers are sorted out.
So what?
But to give them the benefit of that, the medium term economic framework provides that guideline.
That guidance, exactly.
And that guideline is something that has been submitted way before now, that has been approved. You remember that the committees of the National Assembly did carry out some reviews before they agreed to the MTEF, which is
The basis for
the
this.
basis for the final budget that comes down. I think what has changed basically is the exchange rate has gone up a bit higher. The benchmark for crude has also gone up. That's why you're getting to 27.5 million. So let's give them the benefit.
Okay,
of that.
thank you very much. So you see what we've done. We are not even the hallowed chamber. But you see how much time we've spent on it to tell you how important the budget is. I'm just trying to drive this home. And just to even buttress that, see, even someone listening has just mentioned that 40% of the budget cannot 7 trillion naira. So you can see the back and forth already needed.
It's over 40. I'm just
Yes.
doing the rough math in my head.
Yeah.
40% should be about 28 million thereabout. It's
So-
over 40% actually.
Let's move away from budget matters. I'm just saying to
So
see
what
that
is about quarter of it?
the time you need to do a good job on a budget is what is on the 29th, and then you want
No,
to
but like I said, they've done a thorough job, at least to the best of
The
their
MTF.
ability on the MTF.
Okay.
So that is the business budget.
I'll give you a joke. So I think years ago when we had the last dispensation, I remember they brought in this. They wanted to do a zero base
budget.
zero base budget, and I was laughing because I looked at the time frame and I knew, from my experience, I know how long it takes to do that, and it was just like,
Okay.
these guys don't know what they're doing.
But moving on, Wade, please bring us back to Lagos. Lagos, you would have to defend Lagos on this one, or probably speak to it. Lagos now. This is Lagos, according to the Daily Post here. Lagos rated city with worst road traffic in the world. That's according to a latest ranking that's just come out now. So walk us through this, and should we petition this report?
I haven't been to these other cities, so I don't know. But I can speak for the cities I've been to in Nigeria.
Yes.
Yes, Lagos has the most traffic, probably the smallest state in the country. But moving from one end to the other can be sometimes horrendous. um, and a number of things. Population congestion, lack of what's it called, infrastructure that would reduce the number of people who are driving cars and so on. So sometimes if you really want to appreciate Lagos, let there be a public holiday when so many people are not on the road, and it takes you from one end to Lagos to the other. Usually, I don't think it should be more than an hour. But sometimes you spend. Last week I couldn't get in on time. Third mainland was short, so I couldn't come. And I spent almost 2 hours getting here, and that's it. So, um, high possibility. I do think that they're right because they must have done. I haven't seen the report, so maybe I'll go look for the report and read it and see what the bases were. But yes,
Okay.
I do think
So, in fairness, before we let this new report now placing Lagos as the worst city with traffic to rest, would it really even be fair to compare a fish to compare an elephant's ability to swim or to climb a tree with that of a monkey? Is it a fair assessment looking at it to compare Lagos along with cities such as Mexico, Mumbai, Istanbul, Lima, Cairo?
these are all big cities.
So yeah, so I'm just saying, is it a fair?
I do think it is. I think it is.
If you're looking in terms of numbers of people who are
yeah.
in those cities, they are big cities. If you're looking in terms of where those cities ought to be
Yes.
or should be,
Yes.
they are because you're looking at Mumbai, you're looking at Mexico City, Istanbul, Iran.
These are
Those are cities that should be in the class of Lagos. Like,
Lagos is national, and you're looking
no. That's don't tell that to the Lagos state governor or the government. They will tell you they are.
let's not go into that.
Okay, guys.
Lagos.
Okay, so we'll let it right there, but then we can always get you to respond to all of this conversation on 0809 444 0981. That's getting your response to this latest report, and of course to the budget also, which will be presented by President Bola Tinubu, all things being equal, by tomorrow to the joint session of the House. But shortly, we'll be back to pick up some more papers. So make sure your response are coming in. We're Smooth 98.1 FM, and this is Freshly Pressed.
The Smooth Breakfast Show.
This city is complete fair assessment because
You cannot match their infrastructure with Lagos.
No, but whose fault?
whose fault?
Are you looking for a
Whose fault?
reliable way to grow
It's
your money?
these are all
Let me
capitals.
tell you
Lagos,
about
so
ARM. ARM is one of the
So whose fault
largest
is it?
non-bank
These are
They
most
have
of these
better
cities. Those some of these cities are
infrastructure.
Mexico
29
City.
years
Those
of
are cities that
expertise in
should
money
be
management.
which
Wealth
people
creation.
always happen, you will
Almost
call, you will
3
now,
decades.
they will now match
You know the
multiple
reason. You know the
cities.
reason why all
Your
these. You know the
financial
reason why all
goals
these
are
cities
met
are
with
here.
ease,
And
no
I'll
matter
tell you
who you
why.
are.
Because the
Now,
people,
whether it's
the number
growing
of
your
people who
money in
drive.
safe,
If you have
or
alternative
important goals like school
sources
fees,
of
I've heard that
personal
Mumbai's
development,
traffic is horrible.
vacation,
yeah, Mumbai.
rent,
My brother was
buying
in
a
Mumbai.
property,
Mumbai is a
preparing for the
horrible place.
future,
Mumbai is not just a
ARM
horrible
has got
place to
covered.
drive.
We all
It's
know
a
there are a
horrible
lot of
place
apps
to even
out there
trek
promising
because
to grow your money,
everybody
but ARM
is
has
in a
everything
hurry.
you need
Okay.
to go for one.
I don't think it's fair to match Lagos with these cities.
But Lagos wants to match itself with these
I
cities.
don't
Lagos is saying that we are
understand.
we're a mega city.
Why can't you merge Lagos and Cairo?
271
What's the difference?
5002.
What's the population of Riga?
Zero one
Riga
271
Yeah, we haven't said.
Riga
5000.
is not
You don't want to talk
ARM.
about budget.
Let's face
Now you see
tomorrow
what's now the same
together.
thing. They give you this kind of this assessment of Lagos, and you are accepting it
whenever they say
as
Cairo
your
is
as your
whenever
report
they say Cairo
card.
is a bigger
Wadi.
city than Lagos, we always arguing that we are bigger than Cairo.
This guy will kill you.
Now all of a sudden Cairo is number 9. Lagos is no longer.
Okay, guys, we are going back.
Supposed to tell you that they are
Shall
the
we?
fifth largest economy in Africa.
Newspapers this morning, and Lagos as worst traffic. Well, should we say this report cannot stand according to this person's? Well, we'll wait, the verdict will come in. But let's get on to some more of the papers right away. Chips on Wizapu, let's get your response to our next headline, and this is from the Vanguard. 2023 elections brought Nigeria's worst court judgment. That's according to a spokesperson of the Vice President Atiku Abubakar, saying, what are we looking at? Is this the worst we've seen so far?
So that comes to me.
Okay.
So is it the worst? I think that the way the elections have been conducted with all the expectations behind it. I do think that for me, the after elections there was so much heat and thing. But at the end of the day, today now what we see is, I guess maybe, and that's what some people are saying. And in my opinion, is like just when we go to court, we decide it, and then the courts now start to decide a number of things. Some precedents that you think should stand, some of them have been turned around, and we just wait to hear all these verdicts, the final verdicts of the Supreme Court, who have maintained their standards, whether it's in terms of the what's it called, technicalities, in terms of how you go about the process, whether it's about the precedents that have been set before now,
Yes.
and so on. And they have, to a large extent, they've maintained those precedents. So if the appeal courts and the tribunals are swinging left and right, I do think the Supreme Court should come down hard to change what. And according to Boya, it's court judgments to a large extent, yes.
Okay. Place to drift away now to Chibuzo. Help us understand what the Daily Trust newspaper is speaking of when it's with this headline: consider economic indices before banks recapitalization. Experts speaking to the CBN against the backdrop of last Friday's speech made by the CBN governor Yemi Cardoso.
So the CBN governor has been speaking of pushing his that one of his agendas or one of his major programs in his tenure would be to have a recapitalization of the banks in Nigeria, and in his position that we need to have that in the Nigerian economy for the banks to be able to support the size of the economy that we are trying to build or we are having to build. Um, Conceptually quite good. I think what is happening is that also the committee of you know experts are basically saying, hey, slow down, look at what's happening in the economy, and how are we going to get to this point, and what are going to be the impact. So and I would speak from a position, I think, over the last month, or in fact, even as recent as last week, I was reading one of the accounts of one of the former Nigerian, I think it was an MD of one of the banks, and whose bank was part of the recapitalization, and he had to, he retired some years back, and he spoke about how his bank and some of the banks got to recapitalize and the impact of the Nigerian industry, and how while he put the Nigerian banking industry and also the Nigerian economy on a firm foothold in terms of the things that they needed to support, that when we had the financial crisis in 2008, I believe, and when I think it was His Excellency or His Royal Highness, I don't know, yeah, His Royal Highness Lamido Sani had to come in as CBN governor, there were some of the ills that had to be corrected in terms of risk exposure and risk management that were partly caused due to the after effects of that recapitalization. So while recapitalization is good, and most of the banks will achieve that by if when he that program kicks off, the banks will probably be looking at things like mergers and acquisitions, investments from external, selling shares and whatever. The question you have to look at is that, for instance, when you have to sell shares or do offers to the public, can the public afford to take up those offers to give you the inflow that you need to be able to expand? You know, how will the banks? Will you put pressure on the new entities to be able to now do a lot? What kind of exposure do you put on their risk management policies after they bring in that money? Because now have to bring in money to support what they've put in now. So there are a lot of factors to be taken into consideration, really.
But in itself, it isn't as if recapitalization is a bad thing for banks, knowing seeing the impact the last one had in the financial system, in the banking system of the country.
No, conceptually, it's not a bad thing because basically what he's saying is true. Banks, one of the things that we've always complained about was what is the banks turning out the balance sheets and looking at the profit that they are making. And the question myself and a lot of my friends tend to ask is, what impact do the banks really have on the economy in terms of really impact the economy? And you look at a lot of our top tier organizations that they want to get funds actually have to go to foreign. You see them, they're in New York, they're in Mumbai or Bombay or wherever they're in China these days trying to raise funds because The truth is that a lot of the Nigerian banks cannot, even our top tier banks, cannot support.
Deposit and retail banking
No,
there.
No,
I,
no,
I
no, 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 no,
Okay,
no,
so
not
on that
if they're not
theory.
funding,
It's not that
So-
basic, but
so let me just
Okay.
add to
let him
this.
give some insights.
I think the issue is about the capital adequacy.
Yes.
And when you look at across the world, the bases, whether it's Basel 2, Basel 3, and currently going to Basel 4, there are a number of things that the banks need to look at when you compare their shareholders' funds to the aggregate portfolios of their loans. And that's what the CBN governor is addressing. When you look at the loans, the banks have, in my own opinion, hated not just locally but across the world. So these are things that you need to look at. And when you look at the fact that this government is going to run on an expansionary policy basis, meaning that they want to build infrastructures. We're seeing them saying 27 trillion and they want to hit a $1 trillion economy over the next 7 years. These are things, and how do you fund those economies? How do you fund the real economies? You require that capital to be into it. So it's about capital adequacy. A lot of our banks are strong when you have shareholders funds in one of the banks had about 1.7 trillion. So
Right.
they are, but they do need to start to look at those things.
All right,
So what I would say is like we are not looking at it as a dire situation as it when we had the Soludo era where banks actually were in, the banks were in trouble and needed our funds to remain, to remain in business. We are not. But like you said, there's a need and there's a target and the banks need to grow to meet that target. But
Okay.
how do we go about it is the question now.
So that takes us to this paper, The Guardian. And if you do this for us in a minute, Wade, that's federal government to spend 1.1 billion US dollars on rehabilitation of. Okay, that's for Chibuzo. Chibuzo, help us get that one across there.
So the
On six-
MPI said that there are 6 ports that are scheduled for refurbishment or repairs, maintenance, and we need about $1.1 billion, not naira, dollars, to do this. So there's a business case for it, really. And the ports that they're talking about the cane infrastructure in Tinkan, Apapa, Rivers, Delta, Calabar, on there. There's a lot of things. Basically, what the story tells us that infrastructure has fallen down. There's not been repair over a period of time. We need this money to invest to be able to get the ports back to at least some semblance of modern standards.
Okay.
Obviously, the ports play a big role in trying to bring in business into the country. Drive the economy. A lot of people are paying demo rigs for items because they cannot clear. If the ports are working and you have faster things, Nigeria can also be a hub for other countries around, or like what business we are losing to our smaller brethren in smaller countries. So there's a lot of discussions around that, but also you need to look at the customs and how we are targeting the customs with revenue to the instead of efficiency.
All right, thank you very much. Listen,
Sorry, let me just add to that. One of the things I think when people throw out these numbers, we should also remember that there is a lot of concessioning. So my question to the MPA will be all the money that has come from
Where is it coming from? Where is it going?
And reconcessioning, where has it gone? Some of the things that are expected to be done are some of this infrastructure rehabilitation, expansion in conjunction with MPA. So are we coming back again to the federal government and saying we need $1.1 billion?
This brings us to the messages I've got here. Ozzy, we see your message. Thanks for starting that up. So we need Ozzy to be in that budget room when the lawmakers start sitting to deliberate on the budget. So Ozzy, so stay tuned. We'll get to you. Then let's get on to Shegun. We see your message also. 7.7 trillion naira borrowing from a budget of 27 trillion naira is 26%. Shegun sent in that one.
Yeah.
Eyes on the money right now. You can see everyone is looking very.
Oh yeah, 26. Yeah, sorry.
That's what he said.
It's
So
quarter.
Tony from Marine Beach has got a message here. It says, "I'm not sure all these concerns you are raising is so much of a concern to our legislators. For now, it's just normal for them to up the budget value to meet their own interests, even if we have to borrow 70% to fund it. Until the day Nigerians realize to do better, I pray the reason and conscience prevails this time around." Then I would find a message from Ian. We shouldn't petition the report. That's the Lagos with worst traffic, according to that global report. Instead, we should own it with our chest and appreciate the folks who put up this report for being honest. At least that means we should be grateful for being number one, at least for in a report, at least in this essence now. Yeah. Okay, thanks for the response.
It's a business for last month.
Then Dan Okudwa comes up with a message here for us. He says, in what way has the yearly but budget cycle impacted on the life of the average Nigerian? It's always all talk and no action. Dan Okudwa from Igondo left us that one. Next, I would find Ajayi Oluniluwa's Magodo GRA sharing, and he's not happy with that report, and he's got years of experience to back that one. It is impossible that Lagos has the worst traffic gridlock in the world. In his 50 years of sojourn in the city, the traffic situation has been the same or worse in the various parts. That's what Ajayi Oluniluwa can tell you about. So he's been around and he can tell you
It
that.
means the others have gotten better.
So it's two things. The state hasn't grown bigger. The people have gone more. So I don't know how I can remain
And
the same.
maybe the other countries have, the other cities have become better.
Moving on, let's get Dami from Ikeja in here with the message. Ikorodu now. Dami from Ikorodu says, can we hope that we won't have the shenanigans that have been associated with the budget in previous years, like fake copies of the budget or agencies carrying out projects outside their mandate, or non-existent agencies carrying out non-existent? I've got Abbas Oladepo's message in here for us. The judgment will definitely be worse to people whose candidates did not win at the election, and in court. You go to court with facts and evidence and not emotions and hearsay. For the first time in our courts process, we saw the judges taking time to highlight their points and even spent hours, one was over 18 hours, doing that. Well, the Chief Justice of Nigeria said it well. Judges should never bow to emotions of the mobs. We cannot continue to rubbish our judiciary because of our preferred candidates, who ironically were beneficiaries of the court at some point, lost out. Well, Nigeria is getting better, even if some people fail to see it because of their sentiments. Moving on.
I really don't understand.
Olabode is waiting.
These judges, these judgments since 1999 are all available.
What
you can read.
I've got Olabode,
because they announced
Olabode
it.
is waiting
No,
for me.
because they put it on live TV.
Yeah, because on live TV now, it now makes it.
Chibuzo, just
Oh, please.
Olabode from Surulere is here saying, on the recapitalization, it's obviously a good avenue for stolen funds to be laundered. Recapitalization is not what we need, but industrialization. Olabode's
Something
message.
has to drive into.
Yeah, and like the 2 point, like the 5 billion drove the economy.
Exactly.
That's why we are where we are.
That's the expansion of the Obasanjo.
Yeah.
Deji is waiting. Deji says there's traffic due to the really bad road with no good alternative routes. I suggest a dedicated platform when we all start taking pictures of bad roads, their locations, and how long they have been bad, and then post them on social media. Let the whole world see the report card of the state and the federal government. Well, it's a wrap.
Does that website have enough storage?
All right, it's a wrap. That's how we wrap it up. Chibu's always happy. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, thank you so much, Wadi Ahime. And my name is Omashaye Ashinua. Stay tuned. The Grapevine is up next.
I want to bring down
The headlines.
Omazi are the one that is looking for trouble. People say Lagos is the number